Today, I'm very blessed to have Dr. Rebecca Williams of Williams Stress Management with me. We're going to be talking about her stress management practice. Just before we do, let me give you a little bit of background about Rebecca. Rebecca has worked as a GP in the Scottish Borders for over 20 years now. Through her experience of working with many patients who have been struggling with both physical and the mental consequences of stress, Rebecca has some great insights for us. She's an absolutely wonderful coach, an absolutely wonderful mentor. So I'm really, really pleased to have her with us today. Hey, Rebecca, lovely to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks, Simon.
Excellent. We met some time ago at a networking meeting, and right off the bat, Rebecca, I was very, very interested in your stress practice, knowing what it's like to work within stressful environments, within both large companies and also small companies. I've been really, really interested in some of the insights that we've discussed. So I thought it would be great to get you along to a meeting today so that we could possibly share some insights and hopefully benefit some of the viewers that we have out there.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I have some questions. Why did you choose to move away from general practice to set up your own stress management business? It seems like quite a shift from being a general practitioner over to suddenly running, a very, very specific stress management business.
Yeah, and it has been quite a journey, having had absolutely no corporate experience whatsoever. I suppose the reality is that general practice has really changed I set out in 1999, I qualified as a GP, so I've been working for well over 20 years now. And it's just really changed. I won't bore you with all the details as to why, but I just became very aware that I wasn't enjoying my work. I was stagnating, I wasn't fulfilled. But one area of general practice, which I've always loved, is working with patients who are struggling with stress and anxiety, because stress presents in a whole variety of different ways, and they can end up in my practice room as a GP with physical symptoms, mental health symptoms, and just complete kind of emotional fatigue. So it's work I've done as a GP, I've really enjoyed, I seem to have been good at, patients have really appreciated it. So I thought that's an area I'd really like to develop, hence taking the step to set up my own business and see where it took me.
I believe that you're based in Scotland, or you're up on the Scottish Borders?
I am. I'm in the Scottish Borders. It's near a place called Melrose, and it's just about an hour south of Edinburgh.
Okay. But in terms of the people that you work with now, I mean, a lot of your work, I understand, is remote. So you work with people pretty much UK, Europe, wherever you.
Yes, my work is essentially online now. I may start doing workshops again, but it's essentially online. And I've worked with multinational businesses where people have attended my webinars from all over the world. I currently have a one-to-one client in France. But yes, it's wonderful how the internet enables me to work anywhere for anyone who would benefit.
I think that's absolutely superb. If you were to choose one bit of advice about stress for our viewers today, if you were to choose one bit of advice about being able to manage their stress, what would you say to people out there?
I think I would have to talk about the Serenity Prayer. It's something that I have found very helpful. Many of my clients and my patients have found helpful. I'll run through it for your viewers just in case they don't know it, but I suspect many will recognize it. So the Serenity Prayer goes like this: grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. A lot of stress is about feeling overwhelmed. And what this bit of prose is essentially saying, when you're feeling stressed, write down all the things that are making you feel stressed, and then look at that list and identify those things that are within your circle of influence, circle of control, other ways of looking at it, that you can actually do something about to make them feel less stressful. And that helps you feel a bit more positive, and then that sometimes shapes the way you look at other problems in a more positive way. So the Serenity Prayer, I think, is a very good way of transferring overwhelm into feeling a little bit more in control and having a plan.
I think that's so beautiful. I think that is, that's a first-class way to look at it. I mean, quite often we stress over the things that we believe that we've really got no control over, and the fact that we can't necessarily control whatever's happening externally, I guess the only thing that we can control is ourselves. So I think that's excellent. Thank you. Quite often people come to me and talk about stress. They'll talk about the way that stress affects them. So I've seen people with all sorts of unhealthy coping behaviours. So for example, I've known one or two individuals who will overeat. I've known individuals that may, handle stress that they feel through smoking. They might handle it through drinking. It could be any number of things or pursuits which aren't necessarily beneficial to their health. This is going to be a bit of a funny question for you, Rebecca, but what is your take on unhealthy coping behaviours? And do you have any?
Yes, I'm guilty as charged. My take is that we live in a real world, and human beings will very often have unhealthy coping behaviours, because the thing about unhealthy coping behaviours or stress relievers is that they're a quick fix. They make us feel better in the immediate situation. But the trouble is that that's all well and good, but if they're employed on a regular basis or frequently, they have the capacity to cause long-term harm. So I think we all know the dangers of smoking. It's addictive, but it also multiple physical health problems. Alcohol, calorific, can damage the liver, and also highly addictive as well. And I've seen patients in whom alcohol addiction has ruined their lives completely. Sugary fatty foods, again, taste great, but damaging in many ways. And also we mustn't forget caffeine as well is a really, really common one, often used by people who maybe aren't sleeping well, who need caffeine to get themselves through the day. And we mustn't forget the other things that people maybe don't think of as coping behaviours, like time on social media, which we know can affect eyesight and posture, as well as affecting mental health, and also things like spending money. And I've come across people spending way beyond their finances will allow, because it makes them feel good in the immediate moment. So my motto for unhealthy coping behaviours is let them be a treat, not a treatment for underlying issues that need attention. So when you're reaching out for some more alcohol or another sugary sweet, or you're spending more money, just stop and think, hang on, why am I doing this? And can I afford to do it? Is it going to damage me long term? So as I said, I think they can be a treat, but they shouldn't become a regular habit if it's going to cause harm, and they should be balanced with healthy ones. And in terms of my advice, chocolate, dairy milk and giant Toblerone are my utter favourite.
Oh my God, two of my favourites. Oh my God, my family, particularly on birthdays or sometimes at Christmas, will go out and buy one of these enormous Toblerones for me. And do you know what? I've been known to eat one of those things in a day, which is just horrific. It's absolutely.
I'm afraid I can relate to that. They are divine.
Anyhow, right, we must, right, okay, please don't. I'm not even going to say it. That's fine.
But then, yes, it's very much a treat. It's not, and I would try not to do it in a day.
Definitely, yeah, particularly not the massive ones. It's really quite bad. This is a big one, and again, this is somewhere that I've personally been in the past. But what advice would you give to people who, through their levels of stress, sometimes this can affect people's sleep? What advice would you give to people about sleep?
Right, well, there's a lot of advice to give about sleep, really. And as you say, life becomes very much a struggle if we're not sleeping well. The first bit of advice I would say is live your day well. And that includes getting out into fresh air, because we know that daylight, it doesn't have to be sunlight, daylight on the skin helps the body's natural sleep-wake cycle. So especially getting out into daylight in the morning can be very helpful. Getting some physical exercise, ideally within the day, to help tire out your body. Eating regular meals, and particularly not eating a big meal late at night, because the body doesn't handle food very well late at night. Minimizing caffeine, probably cutting out caffeine altogether if sleep is a problem after 6 o'clock or even 4 o'clock, and trying to drink any caffeine you have earlier in the day. And then I think it's really important to have some downtime. So it's really important that you're turning off any notifications for work, emails, anything like that, a good hour or more before you plan to go to bed, so that your brain is having a chance to relax. And don't watch anything too exciting on television, because that will get your heart pumping, and then you'll find it harder. Some people do find a nice long soak in the bath or a shower or whatever helps them as well. Think about light and whether that keeps you awake or wakes you up, especially in the summer. Light often wakes people up in the early hours, so you may need blackout blinds or some kind of blanket over your curtains.
Sure.
Or some eye shades. And people who struggle with sound, think about earplugs. If you have a partner who snores and you've had a run of really bad nights, maybe you need to sleep in different rooms for a while just to break that cycle. And think about having a pen and paper by your bed, because it's amazing how often our mind suddenly thinks of something when we're lying there, and then we think, oh gosh, I've got to remember that for tomorrow, and that creates stress. So if you can just write it down, ideally not putting the light on, just write it down, hopefully you can read your writing, or having a low level, bright, dim light. Glass of water by bed is always helpful, so that if you do have a dry throat, you can sip it. Say to yourself, it doesn't matter if I don't sleep well tonight, because the more you stress about not sleeping, the less likely you are to get to sleep. So just reassure yourself that you will cope, that it's good to rest yourself, whatever, whether or not you sleep or not, and that will be helpful. Once you're in bed and ready to go to bed, something that some people do actually is a gratitude journal, just to help them think positively about the day and to take away any kind of stressful thoughts. Some people maybe do a mindfulness exercise. But I would say, first of all, do some breathing exercises to help your body to relax. And a useful one is diaphragmatic breathing, which is belly breathing. That actually relaxes the body. And another thing to do is a sleep exercise. And a very quick one, which I would recommend, is you close your eyes and you say in your head, I'm imagining the space between my eyes. And as you do so, you picture your face and the space between your eyes. And you say that 3 times. Then the space between your ears 3 times, between your shoulders, elbows, hands, hips, knees, feet. So essentially, you're relaxing your mind, you're relaxing your body, and then there's hopefully a good chance you might get off to sleep. And likewise, repeat that, the breathing exercise and then the sleep exercise if you have to wake up in the night, or if you wake up for the blue or wake up with something. Again, just to calm your body and calm your mind. Hopefully there's something there that will be helpful.
I think that's absolutely amazing. One of the things that's helped me massively, I purchased a small clock that actually plays sort of white noise. So it's got sounds like the sea coming in, just very, very calmly, or you've got the sounds of sort of like birds tweeting, whatever it might. You can set the amount of time that this will play for. So generally, when I go to sleep, I put this thing on for around about 15 minutes, and it's really, really helpful. Thank you. Some really, really good tips there.
I mean, I think you're right. It's if you've got a particular issue, then it's trying to work out, rather than reaching for caffeine the next day to cope with your lack of sleep, try and identify what your issue is with sleep. Is it your busy mind? Is it that you're stressing about it? And try and identify the problem and a solution for that particular problem. Or, as I said, I've given you a lot of general advice that can help if you're not entirely sure what the problem is.
No, absolutely. Just one other thing on sleep. I've heard some people say that if you can't sleep, then you should just get up and not try. Do you sort of advocate really trying to stay in a resting position and relax yourself there, or do you think the getting up works?
I think it's very specific. Individuals need to find what works for them. I have read recently that there is a system of getting up that can help as well. So if you've tried everything, it's not working, what you don't want to do is lie there stressing, because then you aren't going to get to sleep. So some people do find they get up, they maybe just go away and do something. I wouldn't advocate cups of tea, because then you have to get up for a wee later. But so I probably wouldn't advocate a drink, but maybe going and looking at a crossword or a Sudoku, or looking at some photos, giving yourself, say, 10 minutes, and then coming back and restart the process. Or maybe get up for a change of scene. You don't want to associate bed with stress. So get up, sit in a chair, do a mindful exercise, do something, then come back and then just restart the breathing and things like that.
It's a great thing is to, you mentioned the gratitude journal. Think about the things that you're grateful for. Even if things are really stressful, think about how you're going to make tomorrow different. In the best way that you can. Yes. Sometimes I've gone to bed and I've had problems, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to leave this over to my subconscious mind. And I've woken up in the morning and I've had an answer, which is really interesting. So this notion of kind of sleeping on it is great, but I do advocate, do go to sleep with positive references going through your mind. Really, just think about positive things. I think that makes sense.
And so, so if you've got a thing that you're worrying about, you can write it down, then you can just let it go. Thinking positive thoughts. And as you say, gratitude, even in the worst of days, there will be something there, whether it's the sun came out or someone smiled at you, there'll be something there if you look for it, for the positives. And also what you were saying, actually, sleep is a really important form of stress relieving therapy. Actually, when we sleep, during our REM sleep, that's when our brain processes all our thoughts. It hangs on to the important ones and files them away in a calm way. And then it gets rid of the ones we don't need, which is why life often does feel brighter in the morning when we wake up. So actually sleep is really important in all sorts of ways.
Fantastic. One final thing, Rebecca. Can you talk us through some breathing exercises? I mean, I know you mentioned the belly breathing earlier on, but I'm really interested in this. If, for example, it's during the day and, we're actually working and, we're feeling, you're feeling that sort of that tightness of stress and, the sort of overwhelm, the mental self-talk, what sort of breathing exercises do you recommend?
Well, I mean, breathing is so intricately tied up with stress. When people are stressed and anxious, they tend to breathe more shallow breaths. Often if you're sitting at a desk, you're probably hunched over, so your chest is compressed. So breathing is fundamental. And although we think we should all know how to do it because we've been doing it since we were born, we're actually often not doing it correctly. So often what we're doing is we're breathing, we're not breathing deep enough. So we're not getting a full lung full of air. So there's a number of different ones. One of the fundamental points is when we breathe in, that's when our heart rate goes up and our body's kind of more ready for action. When we breathe out, that's when our heart rate goes down and when our body's ready for rest. So ideally, we want to breathe in for shorter than we breathe out. So a very simple one is what they call 7-11, or someone else had said 6 and 8. It's a way of counting in and counting out such that you're breathing out for longer. So it's to breathe in through your nose, let's say for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in through your nose and then out through your mouth for 8. So you have a nice long breath through your mouth. So that's something you can just do 2 or 3 or 4 times whenever you feel like it. The diaphragmatic breathing is it's a hard one to learn because people often find they keep breathing from up here when I try and teach them. But the best way to do it is to do it lying down on the floor on the bed. Put your hand between your belly button and your rib cage. Imagine you have a balloon beneath your hand. As you breathe out, you're forcing all the air out of the balloon. As you breathe in, the balloon is inflating, your hand should rise up. And then what you can do is breathe in for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, or you can breathe out a bit longer. You can play around with it for what works with you, but the point is maybe do 3 or 4 of those breaths and then stop because too many will make you feel like there's a variety of different ones there. And I think people just need to find something that works for them. And maybe if you're feeling really stressed, maybe just the general 6-8 is the easiest one to do. But it's also about practicing them so that when you need them, they're there. And if you're generally going through a stressful time, have a regular habit of doing some healthy breaths on a regular basis through the day.
I think that's absolutely superb advice. Thank you for that, Rebecca. That's absolutely awesome. Just before we wrap up, in terms of ideal clients for you, and do you tend to work with corporates or do you tend to work one-to-one, or do you do a combination of both?
I think I do a combination. Fundamentally, my business is about a proactive approach to stress. So it's about educating, empowering, and equipping people as individuals so they have a better idea of what makes them feel stressed, how they respond to stress or how stress affects them, and then what they can do as an individual to help them become more resilient and better able to cope with pressures in life and stresses in life. So I obviously can help people on an individual basis, which I do via Zoom. In terms of a small business setting, my webinar is a useful way to educate everybody in the business on self-care and self-understanding. And also I can do one-to-ones. And again, in the corporate world, I work with, depends really what people need. But again, my focus is the individuals within that corporate setting in whichever way works for the business.
Roughly, how many people are you, have you spoken to? I mean, because I understand you've spoken to a combination of sort of small groups right up to very, very large groups.
Yeah, so I've done webinars. Obviously, the great thing about a webinar is any number of people can attend. So I think my smallest group was 6 and my largest was 111 in
Wow,
terms of people attending the webinar. So it's a
fantastic.
good way to speak to many people at once. And yet within that context, people are experiencing quite a personal journey, because I ask people to have pen and paper. I ask them to write down various things relating to themselves as an individual. So it's quite a good way to educate many people at once on giving themselves an understanding of themselves.
I mean, your seminars are also very interactive, are they not? Well, I guess you're teaching things like the breathing exercises and
Yes, they're interactive, and I don't have people don't talk to me because it's not about people sharing all their stresses and things like that. But I am asking them to interact with themselves, if you see what I mean. So I might ask them to make a list of their current stressors, the things that are making them feel stressed. I might ask them, when I've talked to them all about all the symptoms of stress, to write down any symptoms they're aware of in themselves. So I'm helping them highlight stress-related issues in themselves, and then I go through all the sort of self-care subjects, which they can then choose the bits that are particularly relevant to them.
first class, first class. Really like to say thank you ever so much for joining me today, Rebecca. I think that your experience, it goes without saying, it's extremely insightful. I think that the methodologies that you talked about today, and I'm confident that these are going to really, really add value to our listeners. If you're an individual, if you're working for a company, I simply cannot recommend Rebecca Williams highly enough. When you have people that are stressed out at companies, it's a really, really bad thing. If people are stressed out individually, it's never good. Thanks, Rebecca. That was really interesting. Rebecca, I understand that you have you're an author. I know that you recently put together a book that's available on Amazon about stress.
Yes, that's right, Simon. I have. This is it. It's a little book called Dealing with Stress, the Mind, Body, Spirit Way. It's a simple guide to stress. It is available on Amazon. It's designed to be a useful reference tool for people. So it covers a lot of what I talk about in my webinars. It gives space for people to reflect on their own situation. And there's many sort of self-care tools there as well. This started out as a handout that I gave my patients. So many of the things that I talk about here are things I've given to my patients and they found really helpful. So yes, if anyone's interested, it's available on Amazon, and I have been told is a useful reference tool.
Do you know, I think that is absolutely cracking. I'm going to be getting a copy myself very shortly. I can't imagine a better way than, checking out the book, and talking to you, be it as a company or be it as an individual. I think that you're very forward thinking in the techniques that you use. I must admit, I like your approach, and I understand that you've had some brilliant feedback from your clients. So what can I say? Well, I'd just like to say thank you to Rebecca. You've been an absolutely awesome guest today. You've come up with some great tips for us on how to manage stress. So what can I say? Thank you ever so much, guys. My name's Simon Childs of Optitude-360 Executive Search Psychology. One more time, at Optitude, we focus on using psychological and psychometric techniques to help companies find great leaders. Don't risk the cost and the frustration of a bad hire. Speak to Optitude. Thank you.
Thank you.